Brent no style. Non-committal. Non-committal. かなさんも、だと、かなさん。
Okay, so the two cases we will look into today are about Corning Glass Works International and followed by the P&G. So let's get things started. Right. So in both cases, both cases trace the evolution of organization structure over a prolonged period of time. Okay, so in the case of Corning, this was their organization structure back at the time of 1972, pretty old structure. Okay, so what do we see here? Why did they structure their organization in this way? What are the, what was the underlying rationale? Yes,
they had a dedicated international kind of like a subsidiary.
Okay.
To handle all the international sales.
Okay. Okay. So they concentrated pretty much the responsibility for international activity here. Right? So this is the president of Corning International Corporation. CIC stands for International Corporation. So, and they have put it under a particular vice chairman. Oh, by the way, this is actually a family business, as you can tell from family name, right? It's like older brother, younger brother over there. What else? Yes, please.
There's not really parallels, so by McAvoy's side is by product divisions. Jay Houghton's side is by, BAM side is by area manager, so it's two different kinds of organizing, right?
Okay, so there is a clear division of labor between these two guys. So this is a family member, and this is a long timer with the family. Okay, so one thing we probably like to think about the basic logic for them to divide their labor or divide their responsibility. Yes.
Yeah, the case mentioned that the area or the country management had very strong independence. And often cannot be easily controlled or influenced by the headquarters, for example.
Okay, so there are at least two things here. The first have to do with the ownership structure back at that time. So many of these like international subsidiaries are like highly independent. You probably are a minority shareholder back at that time. So in that situation, you cannot really exercise too much of managerial control on that. The second thing is that for the headquarters to influence this local operation, to see how many layer they have to go through, right? Probably going through your younger brother is not that difficult, but then you have this president overseeing the entire international operation, and area managers are responsible for a very large region. In fact, let's divide area management into 3 large regions: Latin America, Asia Pacific, and Europe. Okay, and below that you have highly independent subsidiary. Okay, so not only the corporation as a whole has limited shareholdings of the local subsidiary in different countries, but also if you look at the chain of command, you have to go through many stages to reach the subsidiaries. Okay, that's another thing that we noticed from this organization chart. What else? What's the logic, for example, of grouping these 2 types of activity under one man, while at the same time grouping this kind of activity under this guy? Or what the rationale? So imagine that with this structure, it means that people who are doing this and people who are doing those will report to the same boss. What's the implication for having the same boss for this activity? Yes, please.
I think the left part,
Okay.
more people are under vice chairman, I think.
Are on the, sorry?
More employees are existing under vice chairman.
Okay.
And instead, the right part, product division and internal staff,
Okay.
less people comparing to the left one, I think.
Okay.
So, and especially the left one includes international and also area managers as well.
Okay.
So the location itself is very diverse.
Okay.
And it's difficult to manage everyone.
Okay. So chances are, because if you look at the responsibility, you are basically responsible for the whole world, right? So you're saying that perhaps the complexity on the scope of activity here will be higher, and therefore perhaps more people are employed under the vice chairman, who happen to be the younger brother of the chairman.
I think the reason the product divisions were grouped together is, is for them to be able to centralize their R&D, because the company started off as a very R&D focused company.
Okay. R&D is directly under the headquarters. So, I mean, another way to show that there's no chart is to put it here, a parallel position with the president and the vice chair. Any further comments? So put yourself in the position of the chairman. So these are two of, I mean, probably the 2 most important leaders of your company. One is your brother, one is a long time friend of your family. So probably you're telling them to look, anything external will be handled by the younger brother. Anything internal will be handled by this president and COO. Now, if you think about this, these are considered external in the sense of they're probably dealing with like relatively independent sales agent, distributor, semi-autonomous subsidiary of which you only have minority shareholding. So in a way, you're dealing with the outside world. So activities that are involved with the outside world are under the vice chairman, whereas responsibilities that are relatively internal. Right? Product management, product division are probably about product development in general, because you have an R&D center there. So like more basic development or more basic research activity probably will occur in this place. And they're probably doing more like product development as well as, depending on how they organize it, probably the marketing kind of things. But with this kind of structure, they probably will have a difficulty in pushing through a consistent marketing strategy across the globe. So chances are their responsibility are more within the United States. Okay? Now, in fact, this was a typical structure back at that time. So you see international sales as an activity on the top of your domestic activities. Okay, so you establish some kind of international business division to handle that, and you put it somewhere. Okay, so that was the old organizational structure. Okay? Now, before we move further, so what are the advantages of doing this, and what are the disadvantages of having this structure? Yes, please.
One of the disadvantages could be that in case any kind of decisions need to be made, which is usually the case, it needs to be escalated up the structure. So if the area managers have an idea about expanding to Latin America more with
Right.
certain types of products, it
Right.
needs to first go up to Jay Houghton, and then he discusses it with McAvoy, and then
Okay.
McAvoy needs advice from his product divisions, and
Okay.
it's a lot of top discussions instead of area managers communicating with product divisions more.
Okay. Probably you're saying that probably there are too many layers over here. For example, you can put area manager directly under the vice president. This probably will help, depending on whether he can handle that type of span of control. Yes, please.
The advantage is this company can focus both product division and also area, because normally it just focuses either one.
Okay.
But in this organization, you can focus both. But
Okay.
the disadvantage is even if we get a lot of information from the seller, it's difficult to communicate with product division members
Right.
to reflect what kind of next
Right.
product we should launch.
Okay.
Communication programs, of course.
Right. So if this is our domestic sales issue, things are a lot easier because they are handled by product divisions, right? But you can imagine, for example, somewhere in, I don't know, somewhere in Japan. I mean, it's a large economy, so bad example. But somewhere in, I don't know, Myanmar, right? There is a sale issue over there, which have to be addressed, or product issue. Oh no, you have to go all the way. All right, so that's the problem. But what else? What else do you see?
And also it was very difficult for the area managers to collaborate with the product division because
Right.
you have to go through all the layers back to the president and COO.
Right.
And so one result was that it was really difficult for them to reflect the local needs and to
Okay.
adjust their maybe products or sales strategy
Right.
to meet the local needs. So maybe it was harder for them to compete with some local competitors in
Right.
certain markets.
Okay. Basically, the connection between this function and this function is too weak, right? Or too cumbersome, since that's inefficient, depending on how you call it. Okay. Now, but they have been pushing for changes following from this. So one thing is that, as mentioned before, they started with a minority shareholding of overseas subsidiary. So international activities meant basically export for them back at the same time. Okay, but then they try to increase their level of state shareholding across the globe, and they try to increase the level of control so that they can push for integration across different local countries. Okay, now they have some issues. For example, the technology transfer problem, in particular from US to overseas subsidiaries. So you can imagine how difficult it is. Okay. Also, the horizontal coordination between different subsidiaries, right, which is supposed to be under responsibility of area managers, right? But area managers have very limited resources under their disposal, right? If you need to change product specification, right, you have to go all the way through. Okay, so that's the problem they have to deal with. Okay, to address that problem, the first thing they do is that, in addition to the area manager, they now introduce the business managers, okay, who are supposed to like integrate, so their the responsibility of areas manager are of course by geography, whereas the responsibilities for business managers are by line of business across geographic boundaries. Okay, now they have a total of 6 different line of business, which means that they have 6 different business managers. So these guys are supposed to be responsible for coordinating the operation across different local subsidiaries, of which the parent company now have majority shareholding. So they are supposed to be able to at least exercise a higher degree of control. Okay, now, right? So now this is the result of adding this business manager. Okay, so the case gives you at least 3 examples about what happens. Okay, so the business manager first, they have different mentality, which is a reflection of their personal background. So for consumer business, the business manager for this say that I cannot just allow them to sit there. You have got to let people understand that they are now in a worldwide company, not in a local one. So they used to enjoy a high degree of autonomy, but we are a part of a great whole, so you are supposed to try to take that into consideration. Reaction from the subsidiary is that this guy is a total disaster, because this guy was interfering in purely local issues such as how to promote and sell Corning wares on the French market. You don't know French market. Americans don't know the French market. How are you supposed to tell me what to do about my market? I grew up in this area. No. Okay, now, in terms of science and medical, so the idea for this manager was that I would assume worldwide marketing responsibility for product lines, and areas manager are mainly responsible for manufacturing. Okay, so imagine one issue you will have with this structure is how to divide your responsibility. Okay, so business manager was like, I will be responsible for marketing, and you will be responsible for manufacturing. Okay, clear division of labor. The case did not tell you the reaction from subsidiary with that philosophy. Okay, and then you have electrical business manager. So his philosophy is like, my contribution is mainly through integrating the overseas and the US, right? And operation area managers need to retain sole line authority to be effective. Okay, so basically he was like, I'm going to respect what you have been doing in the past. Okay, and what is my area of contribution? One problem that we have encountered before is that the channels between these areas and subsidiaries, management and subsidiary, with the US, which is here, is kind of too weak. Okay, so I have connections due to my long time experience in the US. Okay, so I can leverage my connection to smooth the integration process and the communication process. Okay, that is, so based on this philosophy, the reaction from the subsidiary is that, okay, this guy is more helpful in the sense that they provide necessary coordination in a truly worldwide business. Okay, so how would you interpret this different philosophy and these different reactions? Yes, please.
When I first read it, I noticed that it was very interesting that the 3 different managers took very different approaches.
Exactly.
And I think it was a result of them not clearly defining their role.
Mm-hmm.
And so they all kind of interpreted the role for themselves and defined what they want to do.
Right, exactly.
And so predictably, it had different results and different reactions from the subsidiaries.
Right. The thing is that they did not have this position before. When it was the first time for them to implement that, I mean, it's very difficult for you to specify the expectation. Even the CEO would have little idea about what you are supposed to do to make your position, to make yourself useful and productive. Okay, so it's up to them to decide what they believe. Yes, please.
I think that the appointment was also very sudden, and probably these 3 business managers, they themselves were not well equipped with enough knowledge about how to integrate the whole business. And if you check their background, like 2 or 3 of them, they were from the sales background.
Right.
So if you expect them to immediately integrate the whole product and business, they were limited by their
Right.
abilities.
Right. So in a way, your human resources is not ready yet. So this reminds us of our discussion last week, right? So if you remember, when Sony tried to reorganize their European operation, they used to have highly decentralized model in different countries, and all of a sudden they push for centralization. But who is going to occupy the key position? Which is supposed to coordinate across the Europe? You have people with limited experience constrained to a particular region. You don't have people with pan-European knowledge. Okay, so you probably need time and procedure and the process to develop these people before they can effectively implement. They can effectively carry out their responsibility as an integrator. Okay, what else? What else do you see here? So is it safe or fair for us to conclude that this is the way to go, and this is no? So you should respect what has been going on for a long-term period, and because the major problem is the breakdown of communication between here, the overseas operation, and the U.S. operation. So because of that, I don't intervene on all other matter, and all I do is to be a bridge between the local operation and U.S. operation. Is that the way to go about it? Should we also do the same thing across all different line of business? Okay, now put yourself in the shoes of these people. Okay, so you have been working in US for a sustained period of time. Okay, and now the top management recognize the problem. Okay, we do not have sufficient communication, integration across the world. We want to improve on that. For that purpose, we established this new position, and you are appointed as one of the business managers. What are you going to do? Yes, please.
I guess it's actually very difficult, especially in a very localized business sector.
Okay.
In the consumer part,
Right.
you're from the U.S. department, and suddenly
Right.
you're assigned in the local business.
Right.
You don't have a credibility in the
Okay.
local. So people will probably don't trust you, and probably they want to control their resources themselves.
Right,
So
right.
it's probably very hard for the business manager, especially in that department,
Okay.
to do his
Okay.
work.
Okay. So probably that is particularly a problem for consumer business. Right? Consumer business is known to be different across different locations, right? So you basically try to push the U.S. ways in the French market. It probably does not make sense to begin with, right? Probably the problem will be less in other kind of business where the level of standardization is higher, where the demands from different customers in different places are more homogeneous. Okay, so one thing you probably have to think about is what's the nature of the business? What kind of integration does it require? Right? In a consumer business, what kind of integration will be required? In the electrical business, what kind of integration will be required? Right? The level as well as the nature of integration being required in different lines of business probably different. Right? So there is probably not just like one way through which, depending on that you should try to implement across the board. Any further comments? Yes, please.
The purpose of like setting up this position, one of the purposes was maybe to strengthen the connection between the local
Right.
managers and those product guys in the U.S. But
Right.
there's still no like official way of doing that, and those
Right.
guys who commercial
Right.
success in the US, but
Right.
maybe it's a bit hard for some of those.
Okay. Now think about that. If you think the integration is important and this guy has been leveraging his interpersonal connections to facilitate integration, from the perspective of the CEO or chairman, would you like saying that, oh, you have been done the right things, you are the model business manager, that's the way to go? Is that fair to say that? Why not?
Interpersonal relations,
Right.
you can't, not everybody can have that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a system that you can put in your company.
Okay.
And the company can never rely on interpersonal relations to run the business.
Right.
It's just doesn't work.
Okay. So this probably patch the problem you have with the formal structure. But this is not a long-term solution. That's what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with him, like on a smaller scale, maybe for integration or knowledge transfer or exerting some influence.
Right.
Personal relations can work on a small scale, but when the operations become large and complex,
Right.
it usually cannot handle that sort of
Right.
complexity.
So your overall corporate strategy across the globe is to push for better integration and synergy. Okay? And under that corporate strategy, we probably expect our business manager to do more than just this. But in fact, the way he did it is the easiest. Basically, it's not doing much, right? If I am appointed to this position, this is the easiest thing for me to do. And this guy probably have done things the wrong way, right? But in fact, he's taking the challenge, right? So you probably have to find some middle way. It's not just like, okay, I have friends over there, you need to talk to them, let me do a reference. You have to be more than that. I pay you to do more than that. Okay, so be mindful about two things. The first is that different lines of business may have different needs for integration. Okay, that implies different type of integrations. Okay, the second thing is that this might be a starting point. Okay, but this is not enough because what you try to do is after you have increased your shareholding across the subsidiary, you want to push for better integration across the globe, not just like referring people back and forth. Okay, so for this manager, you probably have to advise him to be more patient, and for this guy, you have to push him to do more. Okay, now, so after they have experimented with the business manager's ideas, and many of them actually end up ineffective. Okay? So the satisfaction in a subsidiary level does not imply strategy success. Because they're comfortable because they don't intervene in the operation. They're happy that you don't touch their kingdom. But that's probably what you want for running this corporation. Okay? So overall, these business managers are not effective. Okay, in facilitating integration. Okay, so what do? They have the idea of establishing a work boards, which are led by business manager and participated by areas managers and some local representative from local subsidiary, and participated as well by representative from the product divisions. Okay, do you like this idea in general? Okay, so in the beginning it was like there's just one man. Have this responsibility, you are free to interpret what you are supposed to do, and people do things their own way, and none of them appear to be effective. So let me put another formal organizational unit over there, which is led by business manager, but participated by representative from area management as well as product management. Okay, so that's the idea. So member of each of the 6 boards, so CIC, which is the business manager, is the chair, and you have subsidiary, like general managers or product managers of different subsidiary, and you as product divisions, the general manager, technical staff, or marketing staff. Okay. Now the case tell you that like must have failed. So they call them like debating society and met only once and next. Okay. The only exception appear to be this optical or technical product. They're renaming their line of business. That's why you have this confusion. Okay, so the comment is that the domestic division manager and I work closely as a team and always sort out our differences before the board met. And because we have sorted out our differences before the board met, the board wouldn't become just a debating society. Okay, what's your reflection on this? What's the overall idea? The second is the possible reason for this to be ineffective in most cases. Yes, please.
There's a description that most have failed, but I think even if this is only one time,
Right.
the meeting is very important.
Okay.
Because if we meet, it's going to be much easier to communicate in daily basis.
Right.
And they're going to reply back.
Okay.
So this is the first step to communicate across
Okay.
the division.
Okay. Yeah, so even though we do not resolve the problem, but at least this type of meeting help us to recognize the problem. The first step to solve a problem is to recognize there is one. In many cases, people are not aware that they have this problem. Yes, please.
I feel like this was similar to the Sony case in the sense that the division manager, or the business manager in this case, was actually a local subsidiary head.
Right, right.
So I guess he had the experience being a local subsidiary head, and you kind of understand what their problems are. So when you talk to the division manager, you can iron out most of what those issues are probably going to be. Right. So maybe it was just the right person in that job.
Okay. Now, in this particular case, in the case of Sony, the CME guy, the integrator was from for example, that Japanese who was appointed later. He has that experience in different local subsidiaries. But for this one, the business manager actually came from US.
Wasn't he the guy from the French subsidiary?
Okay. All right. They are at the later stage. Yes. Okay. So in this scenario, some are from the with the local expertise.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, please.
See the word board member. So in terms of size, there are from 10 to 15 members are there in the board.
Okay.
So once you have more number of people on the board, and each of them will have their own issues to be resolved,
Right.
there will not be a common consensus in between all those members.
Right.
And thereby they will not have they will just tell the problem, but they will not resolve the problem because
Okay.
each and everyone will have their own conflicts.
Right. Right.
And thereby, at most they can go for a very satisfying solution, which will not be the most optimal solution, and hence by this world board setting actually didn't work.
Okay. Okay. Now, one reason that when we have many people participating in the meeting, and most of the participants come with different interests, different background, different ideas about how things should be done. Okay, it's very easy for us to end up in debate, right? But in this situation, you need somebody to take the responsibility. So we need to reach a conclusion at the end, right? So somebody have to make that decision. For example, in our school, the dean is supposed to play that role. It does not really work that way because it does not really work that way. So we end up having many of these useless debating society. No, it's not the reality. They don't debate that at all. Right? They have things sorted out before the meeting. Okay? So, but in other contexts, which I have been to, people were like debating and nobody was like taking the major responsibility. So at the end, okay, we are talking about the issue. So who is going to be responsible for the outcome of the meeting? Obviously not me, so there will be no outcome. Okay, now think about this. Okay, so in this meeting, you have like 3 parties being involved. Who should be responsible for the eventual outcome of the meeting? If you are in the position of the chairman, okay, who are you going to like? You have to ask somebody to shoulder responsibility. Right? This cannot be a debating society. Somebody have to be responsible for the outcome. I want to see the result. Okay? Are you going to like assign the responsibility to business managers, to area managers, or to guys in the product divisions? You can see the dilemma, right? It's not, there's no easy answer. If you assign it to area manager, come on, or a subsidiary head, they only experience in their local like operation, right? You cannot expect somebody with just local expertise to do that. What about product divisions, guys? Okay, they have been concentrating in the U.S. for such a prolonged period of time. How could they handle like the conflict between like Italian businessmen, Italian subsidiaries, and like I don't know, German subsidiary who dislike each other? I cannot ask them to do so. What about the business manager? This is the new role with limited legitimacy in the organizations. Okay, is it fair that you ask them to hold a major responsibility? Probably not. Okay, so you have to do more. And what should you do?
I'm not sure if it was stated in the case, but I think ultimately whoever owns the P&L responsibility should be responsible for the decision
Okay.
in such world boards.
Okay. Now, the area managers or the subsidiary are independent profit and loss centers, so they have profit and loss responsibility. And chances are product divisions, at least with their major responsibility in the US, they are also operated with this kind of profit bottom line. I'm not sure whether we should put that on business manager. Probably not at this stage. Yes, please.
So, as the case stated, the optical products team actually worked.
Mm-hmm.
And he attributed, the manager attributed to two reasons. First is was to a substantial extent a worldwide business. And the second reason is the domestic manager and him work as a team.
Okay. Okay. So first, there's a strong need for global coordination because this project in operation worldwide are pretty much standardized. So it makes sense for you to work together. The second thing probably has more to do with the leadership styles, more participative and so on and so forth. Okay. Yes.
It didn't elaborate much on this point, but I think also similar to the role of the business managers,
Right.
the setup of the world boards may need to be tailored to the business because
Okay.
you cannot apply the same formula
Okay.
to different businesses because
Right.
not all businesses have these worldwide
Okay.
needs and opportunities.
Right.
And not all of the businesses have this strong working relationship between the leaders.
Okay.
So maybe
okay.
they need to tweak the setup of the world board depending on the business.
Okay, okay. So perhaps, for example, since consumer business is more like a differentiated
Yeah, local,
business,
yes.
then perhaps you need stronger involvement from the areas managers and different subsidiary managers. Whereas in, I don't know, optical business, for example, is more integrated and standardized business. So perhaps you will expect stronger involvement from the product divisions. So basically, you set up different kind of like the procedures and policy for different kind of world board to make them effective. And you probably need people with different personal quality and leadership style to have the world board as well. If this guy is more very dominated, you probably wouldn't let him to be a business manager of consumer business, which is going to be a disaster. However, if you appoint a very soft guy to a highly globalized business, this is not going to work as well. So at the end, it's a fit between person, the business, as well as the organizational arrangement. Yes, please.
So if you see the business managers, so they were very young and they
Okay.
did not have enough experience in the company.
Right.
So they were not given enough importance as compared to the area
Right.
managers.
Right.
And thereby there was always a conflict between business managers and area managers.
Right.
And then later you form the world boards,
Okay.
which itself doesn't have any person to basically lead the whole meeting.
Right.
So this whole process was taken in a wrong way.
Okay.
Instead, what the company could have done is they could have appointed either some old experienced member from product divisions or area managers, or
Okay.
a business manager who had enough credibility in the company,
Right,
and
right.
they could have given enough importance in the whole the whole organization.
Right.
So, and they will also exercise their own power when a decision needs to be taken.
Right. Right.
And in that way, you do not have to go for the world board, which was but again, too large and
Right.
no decisions were taken.
Right. So if you have high expectation for a particular business manager to be a global integrator, you cannot appoint a young and inexperienced guy. He simply does not have the experience or the credibility to do these sort of things. Yes, please.
If the whole boards are separated by products, right? Are
Okay.
area managers expected to attend every world board, I assume?
Right,
They meet
exactly.
meetings all the time.
Right, exactly. That's another problem, right? So, and business manager can have the same problem. So there can be issues in Asia and other issues in Europe and issues mainly. You are needed everywhere. Okay, so this needs some improvement. Okay, you can adjust in terms of like the procedures and people while maintain the structure, or you can adjust the structure. Okay, so probably you actually go do both. First, fine tuning the people, the human resources arrangement and procedure and so on and so forth. But there's a limitation as to what you can extend with this kind of minor adjustment or incremental adjustment. Once you reach that limit, you have to go for the next step, which is organizational restructuring. Okay, so this is their new structure. Now, look at this. So you have area managers and then country general managers. Okay, and these are like the business divisions. Okay, the case tells you what do they do. Okay, they actually develop different kind of power or responsibility relationship across different lines of business. Okay, for science and consumer businesses. Okay, when it's come to the country general managers will have the major responsibility. Okay, but for medical and electronics, the headquarters, the product managers under the corporate headquarters have the major responsibility. Now, in fact, in the medical business, because the level of global integration is so high, it's pretty much a highly globalized business. They do not even have country product management function. They only have area product management function, like 3 areas. But for the other line of business, they have country product management function. Okay, and then for these two lines of business, electrical, for example, TV business, and technical products, at least back at that time in the late 70s, these were somewhere in between globalization and localization. Okay, so what happened is that they have relatively equal footing, meaning they have shared responsibilities. That's what the case tells you. What do you think? Okay, so basically you have either country or area product management function. In the headquarters, you also have like centralized you also have like product management function. Okay, when this concern the coordination across the board within a particular line of business, the question is who should bear the major responsibility? What they did is that it depends. Okay, for these two lines of business, guys with local expertise will bear the major responsibility. The power resides in them. Okay, for these lines of business, the people who are in the corporate headquarters will bear the major responsibility for global operations. Okay, and for the medical business, because the level of globalization was so high already, so that you don't really need country level product management function. You organize the local product management function by areas. There's no need for country management, for example, with France. Okay, but these two lines of business are somewhere in between. Okay, so you share the responsibility. You understand the logic? That's what they did. Okay? Now, as you can see, this is different from the cases that we saw last week. In the last 2 weeks, they're like, okay, we had one overarching organization principle, which is centralization or decentralization. And we see problem in centralization, so we move to decentralization as a whole company. And on the other case, they have problem with decentralization, so they change the whole company toward decentralization. So they try to apply one principle across the organization, but in this case they don't. Right? For these two lines of business, they go for a decentralized model. For these two lines of business, they go for a centralized model. For these two lines of business, they go somewhere in between. this make sense to you? Yes, please.
I think just looking at the graph,
Mhm.
it's a little confusing looking that there is two presidents.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say that somebody needs to make a decision for medical.
Right.
Then would it be President Aboy?
Okay.
Or should it be area product manager
Mhm.
who's actually under responsibility of the vice chair,
Okay.
chairman?
Okay.
So it's like, they kind of made it so complicated that it's in between two big fishes in
Right,
the company.
right.
So, do you want to please one or the other
Right,
one?
okay. Yeah, let's think about this further. It's an interesting question, because if you look at this, right? So in the medical business, this is a global business. So the people here are supposed to have more power. So when there are conflict between the area management and medical product team back in the headquarters, in theory or in principle, this guy should have more power over that guy. But I mean, how can that be? I mean, this is the younger brother of the chairman, right? This is a family business. So that's one thing to think about.
It's like either pleasing your direct
Mhm.
manager or pleasing your manager's boss,
Mhm.
who is also quite important, right?
Right. So you have two big fishes there. So
Yeah.
even when the organizational structure tell you that you should, if they have disagreement, this is the guy you listen to, but you
Yeah.
know it's probably
And then
not that easy.
considering that probably both of them at some point would like to become the chairman.
Right.
They are most likely are competing against each other,
Okay.
meaning that most likely they're gonna have
Okay.
different decisions.
Oh, in family business, you know that unless you marry to a family member, you're not going to become chairman, sorry. Yeah, in fact, there's a theory about that. Because in family business, professional managers are deprived of their career opportunity. So you are supposed to pay them more as a compensation. Right? Otherwise, why do they want to be loyal to your company? Right? So in deciding the rewarding scheme, you should reward or compensate the non-family member, especially good ones, more than your own family member. Man, your kids will work for you regardless. You know, care about this compensation. They're going to carry everything you have. So, what's the point? Okay. Well, that's me. Okay. Now, that's one problem. So even in the case where you specify very clearly on the organizational chart that within this business, this is the guy to be responsible, or this guy should have more power, or the other way around, okay? You can still have problems, it's just you have described it. Now, the problem will become even more complicated in these two lines of business, right? You basically tell them that you share the responsibility. Exactly what does that mean? Okay? So how should we address this situation? You know that one situation you can have, which is the worst situation, is that when everybody is responsible, nobody is, which is a typical Japanese type of situation. Yes, please.
I guess the problem is for the electronics department, like, those two people are still in two different areas, like one in the US and one in the local
Right.
business. So that's kind of have this problem of having like a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So from my opinion, it's probably when I'm just setting a localized product team
Okay.
and working with those like a local manager.
Okay, they do have it. This is the localized product management team,
Okay.
working under the country manager, country GMs.
But it's still like a intermediate, right?
No, so you have product teams in the US, you have product teams, for example, in the France,
Yes.
right? So you have supposed to work together, right? The thing is that when it's concerned the product management issues in France, who is going to take the initiative, who is going to have the final say, right? In this case, for example, in electronics, the guys in France will have final say. They're going to decide at the end, in France, product management should be like this. Okay, that's what they do. In theory, how it works is another question. So, okay, now back to the question. So you have the issue where, for example, if you are in the technical business, now you have technical product managers in the US headquarters. You have a technical product manager in France, okay? And when it concerns issue in France product managers, the two guys do not agree, okay? But you share the responsibility, okay? How you know the problem associated with that? But we have to address the problem. So how? What will you do to improve the situation? Because the alternative for you is to assign all the responsibility or the final say to one party. But given the nature of business, it's probably not wise. Right? So what will be a potential solution?
Give upper hand to
Mhm.
one of the parties.
Okay.
Like say if you both disagree,
Okay.
then this person will decide.
Okay. Now, in fact, they're doing it, but in a way that with a clear specification as to the area of responsibility, right? So that is why they end up with something like this. Right? You have this figure, right? And this is in your this is in your case, right? So these are the kind of responsibilities, right? All the kind of different things that you do. Maybe this is just a part of it. I'm sure the whole document. But more lengthy. And then how many people are involved, right? Worldwide management is the product division, so this is pretty much a headquarters. And then this is the US product divisions. And then these are like different area management, right? And then these are activities. And then you can see besides approve, recommend, like business concurrence, technical concurrence, initiative, inputs, joint decision. I'm not sure about joint decision project. It's not that helpful. Yes, please.
In my global marketing team,
Okay.
I remember that I tried to create the same type of product
Okay.
for the team members' role, but
Okay.
after I created, but 1 week later, no one cared about it.
Right.
It's too complicated and then it's not.
Right. So one problem you have, imagine how this is supposed to work. Oh no, this is not supposed to work. One possible scenario for this to work is, okay, we have a disagreement. That check the table. It's all in this area. So here and you're there. Okay, hey, I have the say, so you have to listen to me. And next time you were like, check the table again. Oh, it's your decision again. Now I have to listen to you. You know, you can have it's difficult to imagine that people actually do this.
I guess you need to either give an absolute upper hand, or they probably would do each single case, they would just decide like negotiating, but then that would take a lot
Okay.
of discussions.
Okay. In fact, I had this in my own company, the company I work with. And even, another problem is that this description are like flexible. Right? So you may claim that, no, this fall into my area. And it was like, no, this is your interpretation. My way of reading this is, actually, this issue belong here, so I should be responsible. Okay, so the thing is that if you rely only on the document, it's not going to work. Yes, please.
Does it make sense to put someone else above them, like a regional manager who's responsible for, like, who gets the last say in the debates, regional?
Right, they do have this, right? So
Yeah,
they have
area.
area managers who are responsible for the whole regions.
Yeah. But then he works for vice chairman, and you are working right under the president.
Right.
So,
Right.
the same dilemma.
Yeah.
Just quit.
No, because not many global organizations are as complicated as this. And you can not avoid this level of complexity unless you work in like a very small and simplified and very concentrated business. Then things are easier. But if you work in a large multinational in modern days, this happens all the time.
actually introduced one more mixture of vice chairman and president, who would, so that president would take care only of internal staff, the vice chairman only external staff, and then they have somebody in between who takes care of the rest.
Okay. Now, one thing the case does not provide you, which is what they do after this structure. The case pretty much ends with this structure, right? So let's think about along what you have said. If I want to improve upon this, what is that I'm going to do? So we will touch on this decision grid later, but let's focus on the structural redesign. Okay? So this is probably better. So remember where you were from. So you started from here. Well, in fact, you started from here. Okay? You have an integration problem. Okay? So you have already made significant improvement with all this adjustment. But as you can see, this is not the end of story. You still have to improve further. Right? So if that is the case, what are you going to do? Yes,
I guess if you were to hypothetically have something in the middle, it would, I don't want to get into the next case too much, but they pretty much did something like a global business unit, which kind of be responsible for the products globally.
Okay.
And then really serves as a link between the R&D products and the regions of the areas.
Okay, okay. So put something in between.
Yeah, and then they would own the actual profit and loss responsibility.
Okay, okay. So establish more profit and loss centers in line for each individual business?
Yeah.
Okay. So you basically envelope this stuff, reorganize them into the global business divisions.
Right.
I feel like eventually you would have to choose which side to prioritize,
Mhm.
like whether to go with medical electronics, etc., or prioritize is that area managers and like
Okay.
kind of flip it 90 degrees to one side or the
Okay,
other. But
okay.
then that goes, of course, that's a debate between the two, between the vice chairman and the president.
Okay, okay. Right. Any further comments? How would you going to change the structure further? Yes,
Or
please.
they could do some kind of matrix,
Mhm.
matrix structure,
Okay.
which is kind of like a step before what I was saying before.
Okay.
Which they would have more of this dotted line reporting to the product side, and then
Okay.
mainly responsible will fall under the areas.
Okay, so matrix structure. Now, in a way, this is already a matrix structure.
Yeah.
So this is a line, and these are horizontal connections, just because it's kind of complicated. So, yes.
Maybe we can divide all the businesses in a very specific number of divisions.
Okay.
There are currently 6 divisions. We
Okay.
can narrow it down to, let's say, 3 divisions.
Okay.
And then these divisions can work in all the area,
Okay.
all the countries, and that business would be maintained by the area managers of that area. Like
Okay.
let's say Asia Pacific region, America region.
Okay.
In each of these area, we will have a division, product divisions.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say 3 product divisions, and each of these 3 divisions will be maintained by the area managers.
Okay.
And each of these divisions will have their own R&D.
Okay. Okay. So you have to move or decentralize some of the R&D activities
Yeah.
across.
Because if you will have only one R&D, centralized R&D, you will not get expertise in each of these product divisions.
Okay.
So in order to gain expertise and become a market leader in all of these
Right.
areas, you need to have expert R&D people in each of these divisions.
Right.
And all these divisions will be controlled by area managers of particular
Mhm.
geographical zone.
Okay.
And then it will will solve the problem of who is responsible for which business,
Okay.
and also the innovations will be carried out in all the areas.
Okay. No, they did not do this at the end, but P&G has something that's similar to what you have just suggested. So we can look into that idea more closely later. Yes.
I guess before you make any further changes, I think on the top, from the very top, you have to decide whether you want to be more as a product-focused company or you want to be more geography-focused
Okay.
company, right? So when you make that determination, then maybe you can see how it best aligns to that strategic
Mm.
vision.
But this is interesting comment because this is how the thought or philosophy about organization structure have evolved. Okay. Now, in the earlier days, somewhere in the 70s or 80s, that's what people thought. So you have to choose. It's a trade-off. You want to go for more local, a higher degree of localization that will enable you to respond to local conditions more effectively. From that, you get the economies of being responsive. Okay? Or you want to go push for integration, right? You gain from economy of scale, economy of scope, but you have to sacrifice the level of responsiveness. If you order people around, all from Tokyo's headquarters, then of course, your responsiveness somewhere here and there would be lessened. Okay, so that was the thought before, and then people began to think about, wait, we know that it is very difficult for us to achieve both the high level of local responsiveness and high degree of global integration. What if we actually achieve that? Okay, to do that, we have to give up the idea that we need a unified organizing principle across the board and try to create differentiated organizations. Okay, depending on the level of the nature of the business, it's not just the nature of business, but nature of different functional activities. For example, manufacturing may be more globalized, but sales have to be localized. It also depends on the markets, right? Some markets are more similar to others, some are very distinct. For example, in consumer electronics, Japan is very distinct. It's a class by its own. Whereas if you visit other places, I mean, people pretty much expect the same kind of refrigerators. They wouldn't care about their small dent on the packaging materials as Japanese do, right? So it depends on the market, depends on the function, or depends on geography. You try to apply different organizing principle. So that's how the idea developed. The same thing also, similar development also happened in strategy thinking. So you probably have learned about, for example, Michael Porter's idea about stuck in the middle, right? You either pursue low cost, you pursue differentiation, right? For differentiation, you increase customer willingness to pay, so you earn a premium, your profit margin, or you pursue low cost production, your cost will be reduced. Either way, your profit margin will increase. If you try to approach both, right, you will become less cost effective in comparison to low cost player, whereas you cannot really compete with true differentiator in terms of product differentiation. So you're stuck in the middle, you'll be outcompete by a competitor from both fronts and you will end up dying. Okay, that's the thought. But then people began to think maybe, okay, it is one thing to say it is difficult. It is another to say it is impossible. Now, exactly because it's difficult, so that's why we try to pursue it, because if we succeed, that will become like a foundation for our sustained competitive advantages. And then people began coming up with different kind of ideas, for example, the blue ocean kind of things, right? You probably have learned about this. Increase, reduce, decrease, like add, remove, so create a differentiated value curve without sacrificing your cost structure, something like this. Okay, so the overall thinking is that we want to turn trade-off between seemingly incompatible goals in organizational design and strategy into trade-off. That's what we try to achieve. It's difficult, but that does not mean we don't try. Okay, so, right. So let me show you what they actually did after this. This is their new structure. Right, which is in line with what you had said, right? They now put under the same, they are now under the same boss. This is product divisions and area manager, they are now all under this non-family member. For the guys over here, he now take over the internal staff. So all the staff activity, the administrations, are now under this, and they also put R&D under this guy. Okay, so what's your interpretation? Yes, please. Yes?
I am wondering if that can work. The product division is related to R&D teams and how they can decide the requirement specification.
Okay.
correctly.
Right, you think about this. So R&D teams used to be here, right, directly under the chairman, right? They basically downgrade the R&D units in the overall organizational chart. So why would they want to do it?
Maybe they want to start building the relationship between the little brother and the R&D,
Okay.
like so that maybe it's a hint.
So usually, I mean, the typical principle is this. You put them under the same boss because you expect integration between them, right? But if you look at this, these are like staff, right, R&Ds. Why would you like expect R&D guy to interact closely with those legals or finance guys? It's not like, right.
I'd understand more if R&D was put under McAvoy next, because
Yeah.
area and
Okay.
and R&D could, I don't know why, in my mind I just see more cooperation possibilities.
Okay. So in theory, you probably would put this here.
Yeah.
Right? But can you practically do that? I mean, you have to take this into the, I mean, you have to think about this. This is your younger brother, right? You have taken away the area management, the entire overseas operation from him, okay? And all he got in exchange for that is this internal staff. And it's not like he's going to be excited about dealing with administration. Right? So you have to give him something important to do in exchange. Right? So maybe you have to put R&D under him. If you put R&D under this guy, I mean, it's, yes,
Yeah, I
please.
thought that the decision was, my guess is just political. It's
Okay.
just making sure that his younger brother feels important still. Because something was taken away from him, so so he has to get something else back.
Right.
That was the only reason, it seems like.
Right. That's one possibility. We will never know. Even if you interview him, you say, oh, blah, 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 blah. That will have good justification. So we can only guess.
If I try to see this in a good way,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's not good to hear the customer voice to R&D.
Oh, okay.
So in order to focus on research and development,
Okay.
they try to separate from like area managers or product
Okay.
managers. But
Okay.
I try to see this in a good way.
Okay. Right. So one related issue is that in a way the product division are also doing product development. The R&D team are also doing product development. So you have to also have to specify the divisional labels. There are some R&D activity which have to be isolated from short-term market consideration. Otherwise, they're not going to happen. Right? So if that is the case, you probably have to somehow narrow the scope of an R&D activity over here, whereas at the same time expand the scope of product development activities here. Make this reasonable design. Yes, please.
Maybe we can change the position.
Mm-hmm.
J. Horton can move to area
Okay.
managers and product
Okay.
divisions, and then R&D can be moved to him only, because
Okay.
his brother, of course.
Okay, so maybe swap the position and keep the R&D under the center. I mean, this guy is not with the family, so
Yeah.
if you're not happy, you can retire.
Because if the family issues, if you see, bring the family issue in the business, then it will start impacting the business.
Right.
So, in order to do that, either you remove him, or you give him the most important
Okay.
part.
Okay. One thing that is not explained in the case is what happens to this guy?
Oh.
No. No, I have no idea. Okay, now, another thing that I would like to cover is that we got a bad impression about this kind of decision grid thing. Okay, but let's look at some comments related to this. Okay, there are negative reactions, obviously. So by making all the power relationship explicit and by involving so many managers in the process, it became general knowledge that the country manager only had business concurrent responsibility on many key issues, weakening their effectiveness and credibility. So you have illusion that this guy is in charge. But by participating in the creation of this table, you now understand this guy has no power, so you really have to pay close attention to them. And this may happen not only inside organization, the problem can happen when your key clients, your key local clients, learn about the fact that your country managers are not empowered to resolve their problems. Okay, and that can have negative consequences. Okay, I question the wisdom of formalizing and institutionalizing subtle relationship and decision processes. We're operate under our tacit understanding, and we have all been here for quite a long time. We know how to make things happen. So why do we need to formalize and make all these things explicit? Okay, so these are the negative reactions, but they are positive part. So by getting everyone in a room and effectively dumping all the power on the table, you could ask managers to justify their roles in decision process. Nobody could hide behind the existing organization chart. Okay, so this is how it works. So you look at your existing organizational structure. Some people hold certain decision-making powers, and you did not question why. Why do you deserve that power, right? In the process of making this chart, because I have to put an alphabet here, right, or multiple some alphabets here. So you have to tell me why is that I should assign a major power, decision-making power to you. You have to give me a reason. If you cannot give me a good reason, then the conclusion that can be reached by many people who are participating, who are sitting in a room, is that you do not own that power. It was a mistake. We have to take it back. Okay? So this is one thing that can facilitate organizational changes, because very so often you have those people, like those Kochi-san, sitting there knowing nothing, no longer motivated, outdated, and who have ruined the organizations, but they just sit there holding all the decision-making power. This process forces them to justify themselves, okay, which may facilitate change. Basically, you're weakening the power of some people who do not deserve that power, and empowering those who deserve more power. Okay? The basic organizational principle is, in terms of allocation of decision-making right, is actually very simple. The principle is simple, implementation is difficult. The basic principle is as simple as you should assign power to the person who has the right information and right motivation. That is it. But of course, how to implement that's the challenge. Okay, so the incentive is by this side, so you can alter the people's incentive. The information is also affected by how you arrange the organizational structure, and this is also, of course, this also affects their personal qualification experiences. Okay. So originally, the intent had been to update the grids annually, but the feeling was that this would be unnecessary. Their purpose had been served by establishing the new responsibility and the relationship. So this is not really about what we end up with. It's really about the process, right? So when you tell us we have joint responsibility, it is unclear to both of us what we are expected. Right? But because of the need of creating this table, we have to sit down and justify our demand for power for decision-making right. In this process, we basically optimize, or at least improve the allocation of decision-making right among us, okay? And we also develop a better consensus about what I am responsible for, what you are responsible for. So it is the process that matters. So this is used as an instrument, not as an end by itself. So after you have completed this process in an effective manner, you really don't need this anymore. The implication is that because of this, you should not allow just a small number of people right? Making a decision on how to allocate the decision making right in the room, right? You need to have a sufficient level of participation among people who are going to get the things done, okay? And this is pretty much a socialization process. Okay, so this is not as bad as it is. In fact, this practice still exists nowadays in many places, okay? But you have to be mindful that it is the process through which you implement this, you create this decision-making grid. In fact, if you do things right, people do not have to look at this. Expectation have been created, consensus have been built. So it's clear enough, and this will be needed basically for the new guys. They come to the organization, right? You have you recruit the new product managers into this particular line of business. He has no idea, so he can use this as a reference. Okay? That's when this document becomes useful. But the process of creating this document is the most important part. Okay. So we're doing okay with time. So we will continue in 15 minutes. Now at the start of the next session, or our second session, I will first try to finalize your project group formation. Okay, so know there will be 3 people in each group, so I will need to know who is going to work with who. So we will start from 6:10.